AITA for kicking my 20-year-old daughter, who I financially support, out of my house. I, 45M, am a single father to my daughter, 20F. She is an only child and her mother isn't in the picture. Her mother hasn't been in the picture since Isabella was 2. I don't think Isabella even remembers her, and we don't talk about her. I haven't dated since me and her mother split up 17 years ago. To still live with me and be financially supported by me at the age of 20, Isabella has to follow a number of rules. I know this sounds harsh, but most kids move out at 18. I know I certainly did, and young adults her age are usually at university by now, but Isabella is very resistant to move out. She has a job, but I've limited her to only working 3 days a week. If she wants to work more hours, she can move out and pay rent in her own place. I don't make her pay rent or pay for groceries, but she must help around TJE house when she's not working. I used to hire a cleaner for when I was at work and Isabella was at school, and the cleaner would come twice a week, but since Isabella left school, I require her to replace the tasks of the cleaner. Instead of just sitting around. She's not allowed to drink under my roof or be in my home drunk or hungover, as her mother had alcohol problems, and she's not allowed boys over. If she disagrees with or disobeys any of these rules, she's very welcome to move out. Despite these rules I have for my daughter, we get on very well. Up until recently, Isabella has been pushing against the rules, not completing chores, and I found some bottles of beer under her bed, which was the final straw. I asked her to please leave and she shouted at me. I thought she might be drunk, and as that is a trigger for me, I left the room. The next day I firmly reminded her again, no alcohol in the house. She told me all her friends drink and that I was babying her, and I said that wasn't the reason, and I just didn't want to, and she had to trust me. She told me that me being closed off and secretive about my reasons for things was ruining our relationship, and she never wanted to talk to me again. I told her she couldn't give me the silent treatment in my own house, and I gave her £200 and let her pack her bags and sent her on her way, not caring where she went because she is 20 and old enough to know better. It's been 5 days since Isabella left, and we haven't spoken even once. I miss her, and it is very reminiscent of when Isabella's mother left me in a drunken rage. And I'm starting to think I may be an asshole for kicking my daughter out like that. On the other hand, she is too old to still be living with me, and she knew the rules were firm. We have discussed the consequences many times. YTA. Most kids don't move out at 18, especially in the UK, because there's nowhere to go and people that age can rarely afford housing. This is even more true when you limit her ability to earn money to 3 days a week. The age of drinking is 18 here, so she was doing nothing wrong in having a beer. And this week has been one of the coldest in recent memory in the UK. So you get extra A points for kicking her out with almost no money in a snowstorm. You have control issues that border on abusive. YTA. You have issues. She's 20. Too old to live at home, yet not old enough to have an actual full-time job? Not old enough to date? Not old enough to drink? What are you? Her father or her controlling abusive boyfriend that wants a housewife? YTA. I don't need anything else other than you threw her out after forcing her to only work 3 days a week for the exclusive purpose of making sure she didn't have the money to move out. You're a massive asshole. And it's financial abuse. Edit. Spelling. YTA. How is she supposed to become financially independent if you won't let her work more than 3 days per week? You could have been supporting her while she worked full-time to save money to move out. You've kept her financially hobbled and treated her like a child. Then you booted her because she didn't like it. YTA. Now you lost a wife and a daughter. Mazel tov. YTA. The world is a much different place than it was 20 years ago. It's much harder to live off a part-time salary as a young adult than it used to be. Not to mention this seemed like an overreaction on your part. Edit. And what is up with that part where you talked about limiting the amount of time she's allowed to work? That's controlling and unacceptable. At the minimum, you need to apologize to your daughter. Invite her back into your home. And stop kneecapping her income in order to control her. YTA. Okay, so the first point is that the average age a young person loves out of their parents' house is 25. On top of that, not letting her work full-time to save up the funds to move out is literally financial abuse. On top of that, the legal drinking age in the UK is 18. So I don't see why you have an issue with it at 20. Has your daughter ever shown issues in this area? Or are you just against any forms of alcohol? On top of that, why isn't she allowed boys over? Because you're in awe? Sounds like you're making her life unpleasant at home to encourage her to move out, whilst also refusing to allow her to get the money together to move out. And you apparently love this person? Eesh. YTA. She is 20, not 12. And what is with not letting her work more than 3 days a week? If you had allowed her to work full-time, maybe she would have been able to save up and move into a decent place instead of the indentured servitude you put her in. You suck. YTA. To an absurd degree. Most 18-year-olds do not move out anymore. That view is incredibly outdated. You've made your daughter homeless. Just before Christmas. When it's freezing outside just because she drank some beer. That's ridiculous. She has a job, but I've limited her to only working 3 days a week. If she wants to work more hours, she can move out and pay rent in her own place. This is crazy. How can she save to move if she can't work? It's absurd. £200 might get her 3 nights in a hotel. It won't go far at all. You're clearly blind to realities of living in the modern world. You should support your daughter, and the way you acted here is honestly disgusting. Info. Why did you limit how much she could work? Seems counterproductive to me. YTA, and an idiot to boot. How can she afford to move out when working 3 days a week? Are you even aware of the financial state of the world right now? YTA, in a huge way. She has a job, but I've limited her to only working 3 days a week. If she wants to work more hours, she can move out and pay rent in her own place. You're demonstrating cruel leverage over your daughter here. There's a bunch of ways you could have helped her transition into independent living more easily than that. You set her up to fail. She can't even have her own life without you forcing her into financial jeopardy. YTA. YTA, I don't even know where to begin. She's an adult, but you won't let her work more than 3 days a week? Maybe if you'd let her work more, she would have managed to escape you sooner. She's an adult, but you don't let her drink? You can't stop someone experiencing a normal young adulthood just because of your ex's problems. She's an adult, but you invaded her privacy by looking under her bed? If anything, you're encouraging a problem by making her hide it. If she could drink in the open, she's less likely to develop a problem. You don't let her have boys over, so instead of developing healthy relationships, she probably gets in more danger by going to men's houses and getting drunk there. If she did it at yours, you could protect her. Only good thing you did was kicking her out. It sounds like it's the best thing you've ever done as a parent. Get a grip. Pathetic. YTA. You kicked her out with no notice and no plan in place for her to land on her feet. Also, why restrict the amount she can work? This puts her in a bad financial place to suddenly have to completely support herself. As for the alcohol, I understand your concern, but enforcing a strict ban without any explanation is not going to prevent her from drinking. It almost certainly going to have the opposite effect. If you're worried that she may be genetically predisposed to alcohol addiction, you should have an honest conversation with her about your concerns and what happened with her mother. Overall, it seems you are far less concerned with her well-being and preparing her for adulthood than you are with controlling her. Again, majorly YTA. YTA. First, you limit the time she can work, which doesn't leave her in a good position to afford her own place. I can't speak for your country, but there is absolutely no way my daughter would be able to afford to rent a place without several roommates. She is also your daughter, not your housekeeper. There's a big difference between having chores and working out a cleaning schedule than to dump all the household responsibilities on your daughter. Seriously, man. Get therapy to work through the trauma with your ex instead so you can possibly salvage a relationship with your daughter. YTA for only letting her work 3 days a week along with everything else. How do you expect her to be able to move out and pay for a deposit when she's not allowed to work enough to save for it? It just sounds like you want her home to clean. You also seem to be projecting. You assume she'd be an alcoholic because her mother was, and you need therapy for this. Although it's understandable to be concerned about this, you are controlling her. Don't you understand the huge issue with all of this? You're controlling if she wants to live under your roof, but you make it hard for her to move out as you limit how much she can work. You've been putting her in an almost impossible situation, and she must feel resentful about that. The more I think about this, the more it gets me angry. The fact you threw her out with no notice because she drank some beer is absolutely ridiculous. You need help. If I were your daughter, then that would forever change the relationship I had with my father. YTA. She has a job, but I've limited her to only working 3 days a week. If she wants to work more hours, she can move out and pay rent in her own place. You want a full-time maid. You limit how much she can work. Expect since she isn't working or going to school, she needs to do the chores so she's not sitting around the house, but it's WHO limits how much she can work or she gets kicked out. No wonder she's rebelling against your rules. I told her she couldn't give me the silent treatment in my own house, and I gave her £200 and let her pack her bags and sent her on her way, not caring where she went because she is 20 and old enough to know better. I miss her, and it is very reminiscent of when Isabella's mother left me in a drunken rage. She didn't leave in a drunken rage. You kicked her out. You want to control her so much that she isn't even allowed to not talk to you when you're acting like a complete asshole. You are abusive. You were probably the same way with your wife, and you've replaced your wife with your daughter. You haven't really taught her how to adult or make decisions cause you controlled every aspect of her life. You are most certainly the asshole here. Limiting the amount of time she is allowed to work so she can complete chores and housework is a horrific thing to do to a young adult, especially when you seem to be rather abusively controlling with your stupid rules because you are insecure about someone leaving you. Most people do not move out of their parents' house at 18. That is a boomer fantasy that is no longer viable for most young people. Limiting her working hours to 24 per week equates to £314 per week before taxes. The average rent in the UK as of June 2022 is about £284 per week. That leaves her with £30 per week to spend on food, clothing, utilities and transportation, not to mention entertainment. Based on your description, it genuinely sounds like you care more about being in control than you do your daughter. Again, you are the asshole here. You're definitely You are actively preventing her from becoming an independent, self-sufficient contributor to society. As an adult, She has the legal authority to decide for herself when she works and how many days per week she works. You've got her as your personal slave, not letting her work to achieve independence, but instead making her do all the housework, etc. To top it all off, now you've kicked her out with virtually no means to support herself except her meager wage. I hope she goes to her boss and says, "Hey, I can work as much as you need me to now. Dad just kicked me out, so that's not an issue anymore." YTA. And it's honestly disgusting that you turned your daughter into your wife in every way except the sexual part. You are upset and still emotionally bitter that your ex left you. And honestly, from what I can see, you are the reason she left. You are controlling and abusive. Hopefully your daughter cuts contact with you forever and gets away from you. She deserves better than you. I suggest you go seek therapy for your issues.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. AmITheAsshole is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.